Hey, what's going on, vinyl community? It's Tone, and I'm back a little bit late in the month to do my first installment of new music finds. As you guys know, the past couple months, I've been trying to catch up on showing a lot, not all, but a lot of the things that I've acquired over the past few months, mostly last year, that I'd never got a chance to do new music finds on. And I've done other videos this month and been a little bit busier than normal, and so I haven't been able to do the first one. It's towards the end of the month, so in the next week I'm gonna launch this one and the one for the old, or the new. As you know, I've been splitting them up, showing the old, which is anything, I'm kind of delegating anything that was ever released before 2000 as the old, and anything that's after 2000 that's been released after 2000 as kind of the new. So without any further ado, without any further ado, let's get going. But I also want to show first something that came to my doorstep. This is an album called Lord, What a Morning. And it is a kind of a unique classical, I guess you would categorize it as classical record. Something that I don't have a lot of in my collection. And My Lord, What a Morning is a very popular, very old, what you would consider a Negro spiritual. And I saw Christopher Kibler show this, and he wasn't sure how he acquired it. And I knew about the song. I hadn't heard this version of it. And when I saw it, I'm like, wow, I would be interested in that. And lo and behold, not too far after that comment, this shows up on my doorstep from Christopher Kibler. And it's fantastic. It's Charles Holland is a beautiful tenor vocalist. And he's assisted by Dennis Russell Davies, who's a classical pianist, and combining this old Negro spiritual with classical piano, and it's done extremely well. It's not for everybody, but you know, I have a very eclectic taste in music, as you know, you guys know, and I really like this. It's not something I'm going to listen to on a daily basis, but there are going to be times, depending on what mood I'm in or what I'm doing, that I would love to put this on. It's not something I'm just going to throw in my collection and not listen to again. I really do like this record, and I'm so appreciative that Mr. Kibler was so gracious and kind enough, out of the kindness of his heart, to VCLT me this record. So Kibsy, thank you. I appreciate it very much. And I want you to know that it's getting a lot of listening to. So thank you again. Appreciate it. Getting to things that I've picked up, again, over the past 3/4 of a year that I'm just getting to show. This one I had my eye on quite a few times, as it's been, at record stores here in Los Angeles, and I never picked it up. I've been familiar with Alan Hull. This is Alan Hull Pipe Dream. And this is 73. I'm almost positive it's 1973 on Charisma. And of course, I've been familiar with Alan Hull, as I'm a huge fan of Lindisfarne. Lindisfarne being a British folk rock band from the late 60s. And Alan Hull went on to do a few solo projects that don't fall too far from the tree. I had not heard this record until I picked it up. I was unknowing as what it contained, but I knew that if it was Alan Hull, and me being a big fan of Lindisfarne, that I would enjoy it. And enjoying it is an understatement. This is a fantastic British psych folk record with quite a bit more musical hints of blues rock. So it's a little harder than, I mean, it stays with the Lindisfarne thumbprint. You know, it's his band. I mean, he created Lindisfarne, but it ventures away from that a bit, enough to personalize it, him as a solo artist. And, you know, I've never seen anybody show this record, which is kind of strange. It's not an uncommon record. It's not something that you see in the bins every day. In fact, I pulled it off the wall, although it wasn't expensive. And I think I got it, gosh, I want to say I got it at maybe Freakbeat Records here in Los Angeles. But it's really good. Psych folk rock with beautiful tinges of blues rock, hard blues rock, and it's just a great record. Highly recommended. The next one I'll show is Sweet Revival. Sweet Revival. I believe this record was released in 1970. Sweet Revival is a Christian-based pop psych band from the early 70s, late 60s. They released one LP, one full-length LP. They had a few singles on SSS Records. And it is a Christian-based band, Christian folk, psych folk, or pop psych. And it's really good. It's good to the point where I don't know what happened to the band. I didn't research as to why they didn't make any more records, but I'm upset that they didn't, because I think that they would have been something pretty palatable and desirable for any collector, regardless of the subject matter. I know there's a lot of guys out there who aren't people of faith. I am, so I appreciate it even more. But people who aren't people of faith, who love to collect Christian psych, because it's just really good. And, you know, this falls right in there. I won this in an auction, I believe, with Memphis Vinyl Gym and the Misses in one of their auctions that they used to have. And happy I picked it up. It's in fantastic shape. Again, 1970, I believe it's 1970, on SSS Records. Sweet Revival. Excellent pop psych record. Fantastic. Next one I picked up was an album by the band Smoke. There's a lot of bands named Smoke. There's a band named Black Smoke, from a funk band from the mid-70s that ended up changing their name to Smoke, which I was going to show that too, but I'll save that for another day. This is Smoke. They're a band I think they came out of Dallas or Fort Worth, Texas in the 60s. It was led by John Orvis, brother John Orvis, who had written quite a few hit songs for early rock and roll / doo-wop bands. In fact, he had a hit single in the late 50s or early 60s that had been actually covered quite a few times. It wasn't his release. He just wrote the song, and the song was called East LA. But this band ended up forming, and it's a great, in the vein of the Grateful Dead or bands that came out of, the Bay Area psychedelic scene of the mid and late 60s. This is their sophomore release, I believe. I don't have their debut. This is 1969 on UNI. And the title of the album is called At George's Coffee Shop. If you want to get it on CD, I wanted it on CD too. Sometimes I don't want to flip a record if I'm doing something and I want to listen to the album. And I looked for it just in case, and it was pretty rare. So I ended up finding a copy, the only copy that you can get as a Russian copy. It's an official issue, and I was able to get that from Russia. Other than that, you can only find the vinyl, and it's not something that you run across every day. So Smoke at George's Coffee Shop. It sounds like more of a jam record, like they're just sitting around jamming. And it's not that there's no direction to the album, because there's still direction to the record, but it feels like a jam record. And the vocals are a bit of an acquired taste, but not bad. You just have to get used to the fact that it's kind of like, and I think that's where the feel of the jamming comes in, is with the lyrics and the vocals. But you know, John Orvis is great, and it reminds me of kind of the Grateful Dead meets Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention. That's kind of the take I have on it. Smoke at George's Coffee Shop, 1969 on UNI Records. Really cool. I've never seen anyone show this either, so I'm just curious if anybody else has this record or has seen it shown. Let me know. And if you do have it, let me know what you think about it. All right. Next one is a record that I grew up listening to. I never had in my own personal collection. I was able to come across a great copy from, I think I got it at Record Surplus here in Los Angeles. I did a Record Store Spotlight series video on Record Surplus. I think it was Record Store Spotlight number 2. But this is a 10-Wheel Drive featuring Jenya Raven. And Jenya Raven's a great vocalist. Fantastic, soulful, bluesy rock vocals, a la Janis Joplin. For sure, Janis Joplin. When I listen to Jenya Raven sing, that's exactly what it reminds me of, with a little bit sweeter vocals. Jenya Raven was in a kind of a girly, garagey rock band in the early 60s. I think it was... Oh, God. And Jenya's not even her real name. I forget what her actual birth name is, but I believe the band was called the Gingerbreads, or Jenya and the Gingerbreads, or whatever her real name is in the Gingerbreads. She was also the female vocalist used with the early 60s, I believe it was a quartet band called the Escorts. She sang with the Escorts as well. And then in the late 60s, she, with the rest of the band, formed 10-Wheel Drive. They put out quite a few records. It is a great late 60s feel, early 70s blues rock album with psychedelic tinges, with vocals very, very, very reminiscent of Janis Joplin. So if you are a Janis Joplin fan and you're not familiar with 10-Wheel Drive or Jenya Raven, this is something that you should look at picking up. This is 1969 on Polydor. It's not an expensive record. You can probably, it's a gatefold. You can probably get, I think I paid for the album in this copy. It's almost flawless. The vinyl is near mint, and the cover's not too far off of that. But I think I paid in the range of like 10 or 12 bucks for it. So it's not that expensive a record, and it's highly recommended. So 1969 on UNI Records, 10-Wheel Drive, Jenya Raven on lead vocals, and the album is called Construction Number 1. There you go. The next two records are the same artist, and I won these in an auction as well. Somebody who I'm a big fan of, and I did not have these records. The artist is Eddie Floyd. And of course, he's no stranger to music fans, especially soul music fans of the 60s. Eddie Floyd was in a band called the Falcons, kind of a doo-woppy band in the late 50s, early 60s, called the Falcons. And after the Falcons broke up, he went on to be a songwriter or a staff songwriter and staff producer for the Stax record label. He's written and produced songs for you name it. I won't even go down the list of artists that came off Stax that he wrote for. And of course, he is, when he became a vocalist himself on Stax, of course, He became popular for his debut record and his debut single, which is Knock on Wood, that's been covered by, everybody and your mom. So fantastic. This is Eddie Floyd. You've Got to Have Eddie. This one is 1969 on Stax. It is an original pressing. As is with a lot of soul records of that time and even pop records, there's a nice handful of covers on his albums. It's not all covers, him being a writer and a producer. Of course, there are original songs, but excellent record. Fantastic. And his version of covers, he really goes out of his way, using his production and writing craft and his ability to write melodies and do arrangements to differentiate his versions of covers from anybody else's. So really good. In 1970, his follow-up to that record was California Girl, which is an original song. There are a handful of covers on this record too. This is also on, I think this is on Stax too. Let's see. This is also on Stax, the original Stax label for that time. 1970 on Stax, California Girl, Eddie Floyd. And again, his vocals, are amazing. I mean, if you're a Otis Redding fan or anybody like that, unbelievable vocals. So highly recommended on those. Again, on Stax record, 1970, Eddie Floyd, California Girl. And 1969, Eddie Floyd, You've Got to Have Eddie. Excellent records. I don't have a lot of traditional blues, no matter what style of blues it is. I have a nice handful of blues records, original blues recordings from some great bluesmen, mostly some of the more mainstream guys like Muddy Waters and, things like that. And I'd like to get more into that, whenever people like Danny over at Not Enough Records shows really old folk and blues records. I mean, I really get into watching his videos. He hasn't done one of those in a while, but he used to do a lot of those, and I was fixated on those because I really wanted to dive more into traditional blues and putting more of that stuff in my collection. And then, recently I've been a great fan of watching Chris over at Blues Guy Vinyl in Canada, there in Alberta. And this guy's blues knowledge is fantastic. So I appreciate Chris and I appreciate Danny's knowledge. And, other people show blues here and there, but those guys really tickle my fancy when it comes to showing blues records. And I'm getting more and more into wanting to put some of those heavy things. But this is Philip Walker. And Philip Walker had, as a blues man, traditionally being a blues artist that revolved more around the style of Memphis blues, as far as I can tell. But in the late 50s, he had a hit single called Hello Darling. And that was a big blues record. He didn't have a full-length LP until 1973, which is this record here, the bottom of the top. This is, however, a 1989 reissue. It was the first year that they reissued the bottom of the top by Philip Walker. I don't recall what the original label release was. This is on High Tone Records, 1989. And they changed the cover. I happen to like the cover of this reissue better than I do the original 1973 release. But the great thing about this record is I can detect, even though I'm not super knowledgeable about blues as a genre, I do detect several styles here. I mean, there's definitely offerings of Memphis blues. There is some Delta blues offerings on here, and some Chicago, I'd say there's a couple of Chicago electric blues type of blues style recordings on this record. And I actually really enjoyed this record. I play it quite often, probably because I don't have a lot of blues, but it's my latest blues acquisition, and so I've been playing it a lot. But Chris or Danny, if you could tell me a little bit more about Philip Walker, that'd be great. Fantastic. Again, this is the reissue 1989 on High Tone Records, and the first release was in 1973. Same album title, different cover. It's him. His face is on the cover, just one big face. And but this is a fantastic record. Enjoying it a lot. And last but not least is a country record. I don't show a lot of country. I'm really particular with the country that I put into my collection. Until recently, in the past decade, with the advent of what we are calling alt country, or country folk, modern country folk, bands like the Memphis Dolls or Jason Isbell, Early James. My fascination with country, or my liking of country music, kind of halts right at the early 80s. And it kind of begins right in the mid 60s. So right in between the mid 60s to the extreme early 80s, the country that was released in that era and a half, or that generation, I should say, that's what mostly inundates my collection in terms of the country genre. One day, Jim texts me, Memphis Vinyl Jim, he texts me and he says, "Are you familiar with this song?" And he sent me a video of this band, and I was familiar with these brothers. I didn't own any of them. They'd been around since the late 50s. This is the Glaser Brothers, and this is when they were called Tom Paul and the Glaser Brothers. Of course, Tom Paul Glaser put out a lot of great outlaw country in the 70s, which I do have. I have almost everything that Tom Paul Glaser has ever put out, but I was unfamiliar with them doing the Chris Christopherson cover for the song "Loving Her Was Easier." And Chris Christopherson's version of the song that he wrote in the early 70s, "Loving Her Was Easier," I was very familiar with, but I wasn't familiar with Tom Paul Glaser and the Glaser Brothers doing that song. And I was blown away. It's the best version of that song that's ever been recorded. And this is 1982. I think it's 1982 on Electro Records. All of the Glaser Brothers are now passed away. I think the last one passed away a couple years ago. But these guys are just if you're into country music, from the 60s through the 70s and early 80s, this is right up your alley if you're not familiar. Outlaw country, it's on the milder side of outlaw country. It's very poppy, but outlaw country-ish. And if you have not heard, I'm going to leave a link, as I do with almost everything I show. If you haven't heard their version of "Loving Her Was Easier," or if you've never even heard that song by Chris Christopherson, talk about an extremely well-written song. And if you're not a country fan, it doesn't even matter if you're a country fan, you'll love this song. It's just beautiful. And so I was happy when I finally ran across this. I was just going to get it online, but I'm like, you know what? Let me see if I can find it. And I did find it. I forget where I picked it up at, but the album is called "Loving Her Was Easier," 1982. It's either 83, but I think it's 82 on Electro Records. And it's an absolutely fantastic record. And so there you go. All right, VC, I appreciate you stopping by again. I wanted to kind of rush through that one because in about a week, right at the end of the month, I'll release the new, and we'll go from there. All right. Hope you all are doing well, and I look forward to putting out another one and checking out everyone's recent videos. So talk to you guys soon. All right. God bless you guys. Peace. Let's make a list of all